Nobody talks about this anymore. Everybody knows the name Larry Hoover, but far fewer people really understand the men who kept the machine running while Hoover sat behind bars. One of the biggest names tied to that era was Shorty G, a man whose story still carries fear, loyalty, mystery, and controversy all at once. Some people call him a street legend. Others call him a dangerous enforcer who helped build one of the most powerful gang organizations Chicago ever saw. But no matter how people feel about him, one thing is clear. Shorty G's story represents an entire era of the streets that move differently from today. An era built on structure, discipline, codes, and consequences. And when you really look deeper into it, you realize this wasn't just about gangs. It was about power, control, survival, and loyalty that went far beyond what most people could understand. If you're already locked in, hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and drop a comment below. This is one of those stories most people hear pieces of, but very few break down the full picture. Shorty G didn't even start out as a gangster disciple. That's one of the twists many people never knew. Before his name became connected to the GDs, he was running under a completely different flag. In his younger years, Shorty G was tied to the Black P, Stones, one of Chicago's most respected and feared street organizations. Back then, Chicago was a different world entirely. Every neighborhood had tension. Every block had politics. Every corner had somebody fighting for territory, money, or survival. And Shorty G quickly earned a reputation as somebody who handled business without hesitation. People around him saw the aggression early. They saw the fearlessness. He wasn't known for talking too much or trying to impress people. He was known for action, whether it was protecting territory, enforcing rules, or making money in the streets. Shorty G moved with purpose. He understood the environment he was in, and he adapted fast. The streets respected people who stayed solid under pressure. That was the code back then. Weakness could get you hurt or killed. So men built reputations based on how they carried themselves, how they handled conflict, and whether they stood tall when things got dangerous. Shorty G built that reputation young. But Chicago's street politics always shift. Alliances change. Enemies become business partners. Crews split apart, and eventually, Shorty G made one of the biggest moves of his life. He flipped from the Black P Stones and aligned himself with the Gangster Disciples. And once he joined the GDs, he didn't stay at the bottom for long. He climbed fast, very fast. By the early 1990s, the Gangster Disciples had become one of the most organized and powerful street organizations in Chicago. Larry Hoover, even while incarcerated, still sat at the top as chairman. But organizations that large cannot survive on one name alone. Somebody had to manage the day-to-day operations on the streets. Somebody had to enforce discipline. Somebody had to make sure the money kept flowing. That somebody became Shorty G. In 1992, Larry Hoover officially handed him major authority inside the organization. And from that point on, Shorty G became one of the most powerful men connected to the GDs. He wasn't just another hustler standing on a block corner. He became the structure. Back then, the Gangster Disciples operated almost like a corporation. There were rankings, leadership positions, territories, and systems. You had chairmen, governors, coordinators, regents, and soldiers. Everybody had a role. Everybody answered to somebody higher up. That's what made the organization so powerful. It wasn't random chaos. It was organized. Every section of the city had leadership. Every operation had rules. And if you wanted to make money in certain neighborhoods, you had to respect those rules, whether you were a member or not. Street taxes became part of the system. If independent hustlers wanted to move drugs or operate in GD-controlled territory, they often had to pay fees. Refusing could lead to consequences. Sometimes it meant beatings, sometimes robberies, sometimes worse. Fear helped maintain order, and Shorty G became one of the main people enforcing that structure. That's why his name carried weight. People feared him, but they also respected him because he was known for standing on business. In the streets, consistency matters. People respected men who stayed the same under pressure. And according to many stories from that era, Shorty G rarely folded. Meanwhile, Larry Hoover remained behind bars, but he still communicated with leadership outside. Prison walls didn't completely stop influence back. Then calls were made, messages traveled, orders moved quietly through trusted people. But federal investigators were watching closely. That became one of the biggest problems. The streets often think they're moving in silence, but the federal government plays a long game. They don't always rush. They build cases slowly. They watch patterns. They collect conversations. They connect people together piece by piece until the full picture becomes clear. And eventually, the feds decided they wanted to dismantle the Gangster Disciples leadership entirely. That's when Operation Headache entered the picture. The goal was simple: cut off the leadership and destroy the organization from the top down. Federal prosecutors accused GD leadership of operating massive drug networks, extortion systems, violent enforcement crews, and organized criminal activity across Chicago. The charges hit hard. This wasn't about small-time street cases anymore. This became a full federal war against leadership figures connected to the organization. Shorty G found himself directly in the middle of it. The government painted him as one of the main operational leaders, helping run street activity while Hoover remained incarcerated. Investigators accused leadership of maintaining discipline through fear, collecting money through organized street taxes, and using violence to protect territory and power. The consequences were massive. Shorty G eventually ended up at ADX Florence, the federal supermax prison in Colorado. That prison carries a reputation unlike almost any other facility in America. People call it the Alcatraz of the Rockies. The government sends inmates there when they want complete control and isolation. Inside ADX, life becomes extremely restricted. Minimal movement, minimal communication, minimal human contact. For many inmates, it feels like disappearing from the world entirely. And this is where another major twist in Shorty G's story shocked many people. Years into his sentence, federal officials reportedly offered him an opportunity for a transfer to a lower security prison with better living conditions. Most people would have taken that deal immediately. Less isolation, better daily life, more freedom inside the system. But according to stories tied to his case, which Shorty G refused unless Larry Hoover received the same treatment. That decision became one of the biggest reasons his name still carries respect in certain circles today. Because whether people agree with street culture or not, loyalty remains one of the highest values inside that world. And in a time where many people cooperate, switch sides, or prioritize themselves, stories like that stand out. Shorty G reportedly chose harsher conditions instead of separating himself from Hoover. To many outsiders, that decision sounds crazy. But inside old school street culture, loyalty often meant everything. That's the part modern audiences sometimes struggle to understand. Street organizations weren't just random groups with many members. They became identity, family, survival systems, and belief structures all at once. Once people committed to that life, many believed they were bound to its codes forever. And those codes came with consequences. Some paid with freedom. Some paid with their lives. Some spent decades buried behind prison walls. That's why Shorty G's story creates such mixed emotions. On one side, there's the fear tied to violence, criminal activity, and destruction connected to gang life. On the other side, there's the respect people have for discipline, loyalty, and standing on principles no matter the cost. Then came another unexpected twist nobody saw coming. After decades behind bars, President Joe Biden commuted Shorty G's life sentence. Suddenly, a man many believed would die in prison was walking free again. That shocked people across Chicago and beyond. For younger generations, it almost sounded unreal. Many had only heard stories about men from that era. Stories about organizations controlling neighborhoods with military-like discipline. Stories about names carrying enough weight to stop conflict instantly. Stories about leaders operating entire street systems while sitting behind prison walls, and now one of those men was back outside. That moment reopened debates everywhere. Some people believed the release represented mercy after decades served. Others believed figures tied to organized street violence should never return to society. But regardless of opinion, Shorty G's release forced people to revisit an older era of street culture that many believe no longer exists. Because the streets today look completely different from the streets Shorty G came from. Old school organizations focused heavily on structure. There were rankings, protocols, internal discipline, leadership chains. Silence mattered. Exposure was dangerous. Today, much of street culture operates differently. Now, social media changed everything. Many modern street figures chase visibility instead of avoiding it. They post locations online, flash weapons publicly, live stream conflicts, self-snitch in music lyrics and videos. Attention became currency. Back then, attention often brought federal investigations. Old school figures moved quietly because they understood consequences. Many studied law books while incarcerated. Many avoided unnecessary conversations. Many kept operations secretive because survival depended on it. Today, viral fame often moves faster than actual reputation. That's one reason older names like Shorty G still carry weight in conversations about Chicago history. Whether people admire him or condemn him, they associate his era with organization, discipline, and silence. People feared names back then because those names were tied to real control. Modern street culture sometimes moves more recklessly. Loyalty shifts quickly. Alliances change overnight. Internet attention influences behavior, and many older figures believe the codes disappeared completely. Shorty G's story also highlights something deeper about power itself. Power always comes with pressure. When somebody rises high inside any organization, legal or illegal enemies come with it. Investigators come with it. Betrayal comes with it. Paranoia comes with it. The higher people climb, the heavier the consequences become when things collapse. And eventually, everything in the streets collapses. That's the cycle. Some end up dead. Some end up incarcerated. Some disappear completely. Very few walk away untouched. That's why stories like this continue to fascinate people. They aren't just crime stories. They're stories about ambition, fear, loyalty, leadership, betrayal, and survival in environments where one mistake could change everything forever. For some people, Shorty G represents loyalty and old school discipline. For others, he represents the damage gangs brought to Chicago communities for decades. Both conversations exist at the same time. But no matter what side people stand on, his story remains part of Chicago street history. And maybe the biggest lesson hidden inside all of this is understanding how quickly power can disappear. One moment, somebody controls neighborhoods, money, and influence. The next moment, they're sitting alone inside a supermax prison cell while the world outside keeps moving without them. The streets promise power, respect, and money, but they rarely show people the ending. That's the part nobody talks about enough. Hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and drop a comment below. Where does Shorty G rank in the list of Chicago underworld legends?